if a human being lives in an island without any connection to Jesus or whoever, so that's basically denies the justice of God. So you didn't put any way for me to get to the truth or whatever.
Yeah. So do you live in an island all alone? Is that where you live?
No.
All right. So I did give you a way, and you do have a way. For the man or the woman who is on the island all alone, first of all, it's interesting how they ever got to that island without ever seeing any other people. But if they were, my God is a just God. He would deal with them according to His mercy and His goodness. My God would be a just God. You, sir, need to deal with this for yourself.
So you mentioned that you were suggesting a timeout with some of the facts that you mentioned and just not having evidence for them. Has that been well received at all?
No, nobody receives this. You think these guys are going to stop with their research? No way. But I will tell you something, an interesting story. So that's similar to that. So somebody wanted to get me, a very rich man, a very, very rich man, said that he would get me together with the top 5 people in Origin of Life research. And I said, sure, let's do it, and let's discuss what are the key things that need to be addressed to know that we're going in the right direction here. And all the others would not meet. This guy would fly us to Paris, he'd fly us to London, anywhere we want to go. Business class flights all the way, limos picking us up in our home. And I know he does this because I've gone to others of his meetings like this. And he'll rent a beautiful facility for us, and we'll have servants the whole way. Just to discuss this because he's interested in topics like this. None of them would agree. One said that, I can't say who it is but one said, I would only come if I didn't have to defend anything I've written. And another one said, oh, well, Jim Tour's religion has so influenced him, it's no use even talking to him. I don't even bring religion into this topic. They have some religion maybe, but I don't bring any religion. All my articles on this are purely scientific. I never even bring in some intelligent designer somewhere. I never even do that. I just say, here's the chemistry. So they won't get together with me on that, which is quite telling. But another thing happened recently. I was recently contacted by a group overseas, someone who works in an Origin of Life research group. And he's worked in that group for many years. And he said, I was watching one of your videos online, and I was laughing the whole time because I realized you were right on every point. And I said, this reminds me of the story of Gideon when he went down to the Midianite camp and God showed him what they're saying about him, and it assured him that he was doing the right thing. And so I said, I never thought I'd hear it from someone in your research group there. He says, oh, I want to tell you, all the students here are watching your video too, and they all agree with you. But I understand with students, you got to finish up your PhD. You just got to do it. So I understand that, but the arguments that I'm putting forward to the novice, they may think, oh, well, the expert wouldn't agree with them. The arguments that I put forward are strictly chemistry arguments, and it's not something you can easily argue with. And in fact, my colleagues who are not particularly, they have no dog in this fight. They're just synthetic organic chemists. They look at this and they're like, are you the only guy calling these Origin of Life people out? And so they just look at the data. So the arguments that I put before you today, if there had been organic chemists here, they're the ones who get it the most. They're the ones who are like, yeah, we have no idea. So, I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Hi, thanks for joining us tonight. I noticed that, I think at one point in the presentation you talked about, I believe you referred to like evolution as like a theory, and like you used that word at one point. And I remember, keep hearing that like the word theory has a different meaning in like scientific context, where it's not just a conjecture or hypothesis, but like a well-established explanation for the way things are, and there's tons of evidence behind it. And I think I've heard analogies to the theory of evolution being like the theory of special relativity and things like that. So you want to comment on that?
Sure. So look, we see quote-unquote evolution in the lab all the time. It depends on what you define as evolution. So the word evolution is used so broadly. That's why I kept saying evolution of a complex system. Show me the chemistry behind the evolution of a complex system. We see evolution in the lab all the time, depending on what you call evolution. Small changes, you see this all the time. And so it's all lumped together under evolution. That's why I put on the title, Evolution of a Complex System. Now, as far as a theory, if you would like a different word, we can say a conjecture. We can say a proposal. But these are proposals. They are conjectures based upon evidence that they have. And I understand you do this, you put forth hypotheses. You want to use the word hypotheses? You put forth hypotheses. But what's happened is we hold on to these hypotheses. We hold on to them and we treat them as if they are facts, so that if there's a student in the class who disagrees or who has trouble with that, they're mocked. They're not just left alone, they are mocked. There are professionals who are at my level, who are not put forth in certain societies and for certain awards because we cannot buy into those hypotheses, because we don't see the evidence that's convincing for us. And the other thing that happens, and I'll tell you, this is a real thing, is that you have a group of scientists here, and I've sat in their presence, and they will say, there's 100 million people in this country that don't buy into evolution. What is wrong with the United States? There's 100 million people that don't buy into it, and those are all the Trump supporters. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Maybe the 100 million people don't buy into it because you haven't convinced them. Could that be? Could that be that your hypothesis hasn't been convincing for them? But they speak condescendingly of 100 million people. And I've heard it with my own ears, and I've confronted them on this. And there's people that have seen me confront them on this. And they don't buy into it because the evidence isn't there for them. They're not convinced. And what I've tried to show you is that theories that people love change over time. Conjectures. You don't want to call it a theory? Call it a conjecture. Hypotheses change over time. This is natural. So let's not hold on to them as facts and blackball these people because they don't buy into it, or speak of them as they're a bunch of idiots because they don't buy into it. That's the problem, because it's the 100 million people who fund your research program. You sure you want to speak to them like that? They're the ones paying for this. And therein lies the problem. Okay? I'm not upset with you. I just get passionate sometimes.
Hi. So throughout your talk, you commented a lot on how a prebiotic Earth doesn't have a brain. So from a lot of what I've heard in my training in thermodynamics says it's not a brain problem, it's a probability problem. So I was just wondering if you've done any numbers, or like if you because there was the one number up there, the like 10 to the 90, but
oh yeah, so the numbers have been crunched over and over and over again. Mathematicians have gone through these numbers for decades. The numbers are, no way are we ever going to get life. The numbers are so far against you. I don't show the numbers because I'm coming with an argument that few people have come up with, that few people have brought forth. There are some that have brought, but certainly not in the recent past. And so I'm showing you chemical arguments. The things that I talked about, interactomes are very new in people considering interactomes, the non-covalent interactions. So then I showed the probability of the numbers against that, but I was showing it in the context of a chemical argument. So I've stuck just with the chemical arguments. If you want to stick with the numbers argument, there's no way. Within the time of the entire universe. So, in other words, I wrote about this in my recent article, which is entitled "Time Out," that came out in the journal Inference, and I quote researchers that were saying because of the difficulty with the numbers that there's no time in the entire universe for any of this to have happened. Not just by a little bit, but by a huge amount. So what does the author do? He grabs hold of an infinite number of universes. And so when you have an infinite number of universes, you're talking about infinity, then one could happen. So he confessed that the universe doesn't give enough time, so we're just going to have to go to an infinite number of universes. And that's just hard for people to buy. It's just hard.
Thank you.
I have a question. Just a small
No,
one.
you run Ratio Christi. I mean, your
Oh,
questions
come
are gonna
on,
be
just
too
one.
hard.
So, what about the word chance, the way people use it in today's lingo, like saying give it enough chance? They use chance all the time.
Yeah,
Is chance
yeah.
really a cause? Can you address that? I know it sounds so basic. Could you address
You
it?
sound like you have the answer to this.
I
This is a
may
loaded
not,
question.
but I just want you to address
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And I
It's thrown
tried-
around everywhere.
I tried to address this with time. So people will say, given enough time, this will happen. It's a bunch of baloney because the parts decompose. Remember the parts rust? They decompose. And the very chemical conditions that make the reactions decompose those very products. And so time is the enemy. And as soon as you make that, you got to have the next thing with it that it can react with. Very quickly. And people say, well, early Earth wasn't like Earth today. It didn't have as much oxygen. That's true. Well, that's at least the conjecture. So they'll say it had ammonia. Ammonia is much harsher than is O2. Ammonia is a strong base. Ammonia will take any carbonyl compound and make a bunch of imines out of it. And so it can be very harsh. It would pluck off protons. So you think of an early Earth, and the time argument goes away. I mean, time doesn't help you. And the numbers, that number of chance, the arguments for this have gotten so not in favor of life ever forming, because the mathematicians have crunched these numbers since the early 60s, actually. The numbers have been crunched. That you have to now grasp for infinite number of universes. Because once you choose infinity, then all other numbers are small.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody? Oh, look, right here.
Thank you so much for coming out, Dr. Tu. Question, you talked about sin and what sin means in terms of the Bible.
Yes.
Is there a scientific explanation on biological molecular level what it can be and its connection to yeast and cleansing of the yeast in Old Testament?
Yeah. So I don't know of a molecular definition of sin and how that relates, but I will tell you from experience that sin destroys lives. I have so many data points on this because I'm not a prophet, but I can look at a student and look at their behavior and tell you what their life is going to be like. Unless they change, what their life is going to be like. I see young guys think they have the world by the tail. And I can see their behavior and their actions, and I know that when I see them in a decade or 2 decades, their life is going to be miserable. So I see what sin brings into people's lives, and this is purely by observation. I went to the university at the age of 18 and I never left. And so I have a whole lot of data points on this. And I see what living according to the scriptures. It says in John chapter 7, verse 17, when they were probing Jesus, how do we know what you say is true? Jesus said, if anyone is willing to do his will, he will know of the teaching, whether it is from God or whether I speak from myself. It's as we do the will of God that we understand the perfection of it. That's why I never try to take the unbeliever and convince them about the flood, or about Adam and Eve, or about crossing of the Red Sea. It's the resurrection. That's what the scripture says is the burial. It's the resurrection. And that's the thing that's been placed on the heart of men and women that they can go away with and believe, because it's already there. When it comes to the Bible as a whole, you can't expect a brand new believer to say, this is the Word of God. You get this exactly as Jesus said. When you're willing to do His will, when you follow the precepts that are here, you see the results of it. You see the results of it in people's lives, your own life and every life around you. And that's when you learn that this book is true.
All right. Anybody else? I think we're about wrapped up here. All right, one more. Going 1, 2, 3. All right. Well, okay. This is definitely the last question. I meant to say last one.
I have one question. Is God just? And justice exists in the Word.
Certainly the Bible says He is. God is a just God, and He's an all-knowing God. And so when He's all-knowing, and He loves to the extent that He does love, I could never call Him unjust. I mean, if I were running this world, I would do it very differently, and with a lot less justice than He does it. So I know what the scriptures say about Him, and I've come to know Him and to love Him, and I trust Him. I trust Him.
Okay, so if a human being lives in an island without any connection to Jesus or whoever, so that's basically denies the justice of God. So you didn't put any way for me to get to the truth or whatever.
Yeah. So do you live in an island all alone? Is that where you live?
No.
All right. So I did give you a way, and you do have a way. For the man or the woman who is on the island all alone, first of all, it's interesting how they ever got to that island without ever seeing any other people. But if they were, my God is a just God. He would deal with them according to His mercy and His goodness. My God would be a just God. You, sir, need to deal with this for yourself. You throw out these hypotheticals, and Jesus comes to you, and He's touching your heart. He is the one that is touching your heart. And I pray that you have a vision of Jesus coming to you. And that shows you that indeed God is, and He is kind and gracious as He comes to you in this vision. Because I know you believe in visions. I know you do. And He will come to you.
I believe in all prophets. They're great men. But being Jesus the only truth is, I think it's not true.
All right. Well, may Jesus come to you and show you His way. And I pray that when He comes to you, your heart will be open, sir.
Well, if I live in Amazon, He never can come.
Do you live in Amazon?
Yeah.
I don't know why you keep
we can
going
assume
to this.
that.
You
That's the
live
chance
right here.
of being in Amazon.
All right. When you're in the Amazon, we'll speak differently. But now that you live in Columbus, Ohio, let's deal with you right here, sir.
Right. This is a fact. Like you put some numbers up there, and scientifically, and there is a little chance to get struck by like thunderstruck. So it's like 1 per million. But there are people that got struck by the thunderstruck like 3 times. It's like almost 0, but it happens. There's a chance for me to be born in Amazon, and I have no idea how to get to a land that even Jesus reached there,
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And God is a just God, and He'll sort it out. I trust Him.
That's not a scientific way to prove it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's not scientific. You're not giving me anything scientific. I mean, so, I'm just speaking based on the faith that I have. If you're enjoying this series, give us a thumbs up and click the subscribe button, and that way you'll hear when we're coming out with new videos. There are no salaried employees in this organization. All the accounting, all the legal work, that's all done by friends of mine. The only thing that I have to pay for is the production work, and if you could help us out with that, I'd appreciate it. There's a link below where you can just click on that and help us in several different ways. Thank you.